Good morning, everybody. It is the 26th of February, 2026, and it is Thursday and 11:45 in the morning. That's why I said good morning. So one of the big stories, as you might have already heard, I'm sure about everybody has heard already now, is that the United States was trying some sort of an insurgency attack in Cuba. But of course, they had nothing to do with it because it wasn't a Navy ship and it wasn't a Coast Guard ship. Yeah, as if they were going to use a Coast Guard ship or a U.S. Navy ship, and then it kind of is obvious who was involved then. But I don't know. This stuff, it just gets too ridiculous. I mean, they think everybody is pretty stupid that they're going to use. It's just I don't know. What is it going to be like that boat that those people used to, that actually probably never really existed. It was used to blow up the Nord Stream pipelines or something like that. But nobody knows if there's any truth to that. Seymour Hersh got a different cue on that very early on and said about how that worked out. And that looks very, very plausible. And the Russians, I guess, they more believe in that because, they're not letting the Russians get anywhere near that site because it's very easy to find out who did that when you, as Scott Ritter said, as Scott Ritter was a weapons inspector, he said all you have to do is get some of the sediment on the floor around where that explosion took place and you can find out where those bombs were made, who made the bombs. And again, that doesn't exactly tell positively on who did it, but it can lead you in the right direction. And of course, in truth, as you all know, in the Nord Stream pipelines, there was no investigation. But anyway, that's old news, so let's talk about this one. This one was a very large speedboat, I guess, if you'd call it a speedboat, because it had 10 men in there, and it was 10 armed men with a lot of rifles, explosives, things like that. I guess, small arms sort of deal for some sort of a insurgency in that way. And this boat, as it was in Cuban waters and getting closer to the shore, they're the ones that initiated fire on the Cuban patrol boat that was around there. So the Cubans fired back, and 4 of them were killed, and 6 of them, I guess all 6, were injured. So they have these people in custody. So 4 killed, 6 injured, and a 7th person, I guess, if I'm getting this all right, because it was 10 altogether, 4 killed, 6 injured, and it's not really a 7th, I guess you would say. It's an 11th person, but the story said a 7th, but it's the 11th person is somebody that was already in Cuba. They were, I guess you would call that an advanced party. In the military, I was an advanced party some of the times as well. So it was, I guess, maybe a one-man advanced party, which doesn't make sense. There's probably a couple, and they only caught 1 already. He's probably protecting some of the other 2 or 3 or however many they sent. But he was supposed to be there to make sure that the landing went well. And the United States is denying any involvement in that. But you got to remember, there's 6 of them that are still alive, and they're injured. And this other man has already spilled the beans. So they already know that the United States was the one that was perpetrating this. So it's, it's kind of fruitless where Marco Rubio or anybody else says, oh, we didn't know anything about it. And they were saying as proof that they didn't know anything about it. It's because it's not a Navy ship and it's not a Coast Guard ship. So that, they would never, be smart enough to figure out to use a civilian type ship for some operation like that. God, it's just unbelievable how stupid they think everybody is. Let's see, did I miss anything? Well, Cuba's calling them terrorists, and, so what is a terrorist? I guess if anybody does anything like that against the U.S., they're automatically a terrorist. But when the U.S. does this stuff to so many other countries, perpetually, it's not terrorism. I don't know what it's called. But who was it the other day? I don't know if it was Lindsey Graham. It sounds, but there's a lot of these war hawk type peoples in the United States government, and I think they were labeling Iran. It might have even been Witkoff, to be honest with you. But they were labeling Iran to be the top sponsor of terrorism in the world. And it's like, who? When? What terrorism? People that are fighting for their own freedom, such as Hezbollah And Hamas, they've got us all brainwashed into thinking those people are terrorists, but they're not terrorists. They are trying to expel Israel off of their soil. So if you do not let Israel take what Israel wants from you, then you are a terrorist. I guess that's what it is. And that's why they're killing all the children. They said that they're terrorists as well. And they really do. They say they're terrorists. Like a 2-month-old baby is a terrorist. Yeah. So I guess if you look at that definition, I don't know. If you try to defend yourself against the U.S. or Israel, you're a terrorist. And that's plain and simple. That's all it is. I don't know what they call the people that are defending themselves against the United States or Israel. No, those are the terrorists. But what are those people? Well, what I was trying to get at is what do those people call themselves? I guess they'd call themselves freedom fighters, but I don't know. It's just a topsy-turvy world, and I think it was Candace Owens that was saying, who is the big authority on the definitions nowadays anyway? Yeah. So Ukraine, they've announced, this is another good one, a good piece. They're taking a lesson from Israel, and it's also about definitions. This is about definitions. So the world is floating with definitions now, but it's like fascism. Fascism started out as something completely different. Fascism was as Mussolini, and he was one of the founding fathers of fascism back in the year 1919 when he started something called the Fascist Party of Italy. He said that fascism is the marriage of corporate money to government power. In other words, it's economic. And it's an economic system that is supposed to fit into socialism, which is on the left. But yet fascism is supposed to be far right. And fascism is like Nazis, and I guess it's equated with not liking or going against Jews or some other ethnic group or whatever. So the whole deal is, it's like the definitions change anyway, and you don't even know what to call them yourself because things are something different. It's like who's on the left and who's on the right. Left used to be communist type of peoples and socialists, and the right were like Republicans, like Donald Trump isn't, something like that. And then a lot of times they said those were conservatives, but conservative is a person that's resistant to change. And Donald Trump, can you say that he is resistant to change? He's not resistant to change. He is the guy, like I always say, he's the one that wants to keep tipping over the apple cart and have everybody scrambling for apples and trying to figure out how are you going to put the apples back in and which order. And Donald Trump is the very opposite of a conservative. There is nobody that is more anti-conservative in U.S. politics than a guy called Donald Trump. Obama is a conservative in comparison to Donald Trump. So don't ever call Donald Trump a conservative because he certainly isn't. And you can just give that argument to anybody who calls Donald Trump a conservative, which he's the pure opposite of a conservative. Conservatism is against war and military invasions and things. Boy, what a definitions. So this other definition, let's get into that. Ukraine has announced that anyone who calls Ukraine's recruitment forced mobilization, basically they said they're stupid. They're stupid and they have fallen for Russian propaganda and the language of the enemy, I guess is that's the words they use as well. And these are hostile words. Oh, we're so gentle, and those mean I guess in Ukraine, the people call it bussification, whatever that is. I guess, because they call these little minibuses, I guess, and sticking them in a minibus and, beating them up and whatever, and then carting them off. Maybe they get some training, and maybe, I'm sure they get some training, like they show them how to use a rifle a little bit, maybe in 15-minute demonstration, and then send them up on the front line. But they're also called in Ukrainian man trappers. And if you call them that, then you're working for the enemy. That's what they said. So in other words, you're a acolyte of Putin or something like that, I guess. Forced mobilization. Yeah, you work for Putin if you say that. Those getting them in off the streets, breaking into their homes are national encouragement personnel, I guess. Recruiting people like that. Oh my God. And so they're just encouraging people to fight for Ukraine, I suppose, and if they run the other direction, they're just misguided. And these people, have to help them out. I think they need counseling, I think is what it was. They help men realize their true desires in life, which is to die for Ukraine, to die killing your own brothers and sisters, whatever, I suppose. While you're helping a couple Nazis getting rich at your expense, the expense of your life, as a matter of fact. Wow. So they're hoping that maybe these people will get up there and kill a Russian or two. Makes me wonder what the cost is. Well, the cost doesn't matter because it's coming from the United States and Europe, of course. And there's a lot of people that have been killed and injured, bones broken, killed. And even some that have died getting recruited by these jokers. So let me straighten this out a little bit here. If I can do that. If it's straighter. I think so. Okay. Oh boy. Yeah, so the rest of their short life they can serve it, spill their blood for the Nazis. Wow. I guess probably the reason that they're going to be using is those people didn't die at the hands of the recruiters. These people were just dying to go fight for Nazism. I guess that's what killed them because they're just dying to do that. They're dying to go out and kill Russians for the cause of Nazism. Yes, I guess. The foreign minister of Poland, Sikorski, he's the same guy that posted something, I think it was on X, and he showed that the overhead photo of all of the gas spilling out of the Nord Stream pipelines, underneath the Baltic Sea when it's all bubbling out, and said, "Thank you, USA." That's the same guy. So this same guy, the foreign minister of Poland, I think at that time he was some representative for the European Union for Poland, but now he's the foreign minister. I guess that's how you get promoted, is talking about these things like that. And who is he married to? I think he's married to some American woman, but he's a real nasty guy, by the way. And you got to look him up. So Sikorski, he said, what does he say? He said, he was talking in an interview. He said this in English, by the way, so maybe you can find this, that if Putin conquers Ukraine, didn't say anything about Europe, if Putin conquers Ukraine, Russia would become the partner for the U.S. in global distribution of power. We think the EU, with much bigger economy and democracy and so on, should be America's main partner on this continent. Those were his exact words. He didn't say anything about Putin marching into Ukraine. He didn't say anything about any saving lives or anything like that. This is about total domination. That's the only thing that's in this person's mind. He was actually just spilling the talking points of Brussels. It has nothing to do with security. He would have said security if it's such a big deal. See, Zelensky, at least he knows how to hide the truth and keep talking security. And of course, security is, some kind of a concern for him, because if you say security, that means you get weapons and things. And that means maybe you can stop the Russian weapons, and then whatever offensive weapons you have, you can just rain them down upon the Russian people, as he's already doing. He's taken Czech bombs from Czech Republic and American bombs, and he's, sending them into Russian cities. Most of them are close to the border, Belgorod. I think their hope is probably to be one day, which not going to happen, I don't think, taking territory from Russia in that way. But, you hear of attacks in Smolensk. That's a long way. That's on the other side of the border from Belarus up there. So, and of course, attacks on Moscow and even, Rostov-on-Don. I don't know about Sochi. I don't think I've heard of anything in Sochi, but sometimes he's going far beyond. But a lot of those attacks, of course, are done in coordination with the CIA. That's already been put out. A lot of the further attacks, and the CIA is working with Ukraine to hit targets in Russia, and that's already been proven. So, and I guess Russia proved that to the United States, and the United States basically just shut their mouth and walked away when they had that attack of 91 drones. And They say that it was, at least at that time, they said it was an attack on Putin, but Putin, I guess, was not in that residence. And instead, right nearby is an air base, and it's part of the nuclear triad of Russia. And I guess that is what the CIA was trying to attack, probably to check their defenses to see if they would and could shoot them down to some of these drones, so like an overwhelming attack. And that will tell them a lot, because if they weren't able to shoot those things down, then they could do further attacks. It's sort of like what happened, and I guess I can talk about it now because that was quite a long, long time ago. That was back in 2022. And I am one of the very few people that witnessed this myself. I didn't witness the attack, I witnessed the aftermath of the attack. And I did videos, but I didn't want to say this, and I don't think it matters anymore. But when Ukraine attacked it was, I guess, I think it's called an A8, and it's very much like these statostrobes, what the United States has, like an E3 or something. It's like a spy plane that, has like a pillar and then a big dish on the top, and it's done for radar and for spying and, ground surveillance from high up above. And but Russia had one parked in Minsk, and Ukraine attacked it with drones. And the damage was somewhat minor. I know that it was somewhat minor because I was up in the morning that day, very, very early. It was in the summertime, and it was like 4 something in the morning. And the place that I was staying, and I guess I won't say where that was, but the place I was staying, and as you know, most people aren't up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but here I looked out the window, it was a new sunrise, and I see this big old plane in a place where planes are never at. So I see this huge plane coming, and I said, what the? And I said, somebody, hey, come look at this. And then there's this big old plane flying through the air, and it made a landing in a nearby airport. And it was that plane. So I can tell you that if there was damage, it was very minor. That's a true fact, but it was an attack by Ukraine. So, and I never said anything about that. I've never heard of anybody that witnessed it besides myself, at least moving this plane over there, because that plane has never been to that airport and never would go, and it just was at that time. And then lo and behold, the news came out soon right after that a plane had been attacked, and they showed a picture of that plane. So I said, wow, So you want my autograph, I can, just $100, you just write to me. Anyway, something, stuff like that. It's kind of weird. I don't play any part or nothing, and then sometimes you can witness something it's like that. It's amazing. What else? So Sikorsky, he's saying a lot of the quiet part out loud, and like he's talking about conquers Ukraine. So they have a fear, obviously, that Russia wants to conquer Ukraine. I mean, that's justifiable, sure. But he didn't say Europe, because he didn't say, oh, when they do that, then they're going to come after Europe. There was no mention of that whatsoever. It's kind of like you're wondering, because they're putting out all the time, oh, when Putin's done with Ukraine, he's going to go into Europe, and that's why we have to stop him in Ukraine, and that's why Ukraine is the front defense lines, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, it's all BS, and that just proves it all right there. So what they want, what Europe wants, and this is coming out of Brussels, obviously, is they want domination. They want to be a domination partner of the United States, probably on the continent. It's just exactly like the role that Israel fills. Israel wants to fill the domination partner of the entire Middle East over all of the countries. It's not like they feel a threat. A lot of these people, they don't have any desire to attack Israel, but you have to stay in line, and you cannot advance, and you cannot get a decent sized military. You cannot have these things, and you cannot have those weapons, So that's mostly what that's about. Saudi Arabia, I believe they have F-35s. I don't know about missiles. They might have things, but who knows? I guess something is much different there. But and I guess Saudi Arabia, they know, is not really so much big fans of the Palestinians. Surprise, surprise, in case you didn't know that. Sure, they act like they do, but they're not that concerned really whatsoever. Because one of them is Sunni, which is the Saudi Arabians, and the other ones are Christians and in favor of the Shia, which is the Palestinians. And that's how that is, because they're good friends with Iran, which is Shia. And remember the Ba'ath Party? And anyway, so, but a lot of these people, they should, instead of looking at, whoa, what is my party and this belief and that and being forced, I don't know, it's just everybody's ideology. It's just the Israelis are all crazy in that way too. Not all of them, but I guess they use the ideology. They use the ideology to make you think that that's exactly what you want to do, is kill these people because they don't like your ideology. I mean, if your ideology is to kill other people, such as the Nazis are, that's one thing. But yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot more to this than I was just saying. More than just this domination. It's so he's saying, Sikorsky he's afraid that the United States will choose Russia instead of Europe. And it's kind of weird because he just doesn't seem to realize that we're talking like there's on two sides. Where is Europe at on this? I don't know. But you have the one side, which is the multipolar world, which is Russia and China and the BRICS, as that's all about the BRICS and all of those countries that want to join the BRICS. And then you have the unipolar world, which is the United States dominates everybody. And I was thinking that's just a coercive thing, and it's the United States is going to go around the world and, by hook or by crook, with the gun and with the threats, with the stick and a little carrot, but a big stick, make everybody adhere to, for one thing, the U.S. dollar and U.S. hegemony all over everything. And Europe has found themselves in a kind of a strange predicament now. So, but the United States wants to rule the world alone. The masters of the master of the universe. You guys all know that. One ring to bind them all, not two or five. So it's Trump or no Trump. The unipolar world. And Europe has spent the last 20 years, in case you haven't noticed, weakening themselves and thinking that maybe that's what the United States wants, to show that they're subservient to the United States. So we'll make ourselves really weak. We'll adopt your LGBTQ+, and we'll deindustrialize to make us weaker, look weaker. There's all kinds of things. What else was there? Anyway, you guys all know that, weaken their economy and invite a whole bunch of migrants in and destroy your own culture. And you can think of other things too, all of them this is supposed to, play along. And of course the U.S. was doing it as well, but that was mostly for Democratic votes. And they did it far, far less. I'll tell you what, I remember some of those migrant years. And one year it was Germany, which is like the size of maybe, smaller than Oregon and Idaho. Probably it's like the size of Oregon and Washington State. And they brought in the course of 1 year, it was 1.2 million migrants. And the entire United States, which is far, far, far bigger and far more populous, they brought in 350,000, and they were crying about migration. It's like, wow, So, in other words, it's a drop in the bucket in the United States compared to how they're changing their culture in Europe. And Germany is not even as bad as the UK. The UK is a real mess. So is France. And Germany's not pretty, but it's not anywhere near as changed as France or the UK. And then there's places, I guess, in Sweden. I've never been to Sweden. I can't speak so much for Sweden, but I realized back then there were like towns that they were trying to declare independence from Sweden and set up their own country because they were almost predominantly all Islamic people that they brought in there. I mean, gee, what a bunch of friggin' idiots. So, but anyway, this thing about Trump and Greenland, I guess that woke them up quite a bit. And the first person, as we all know, to acknowledge that was Mark Carney. So they're half awoken. They're half awoken. They're still on the we have to hate Russia beyond all doubt. So that they really did a good job on that, indoctrinating Europe to hate Russia. Germany was getting most all of their energy from Russia. And, to basically dump them and call them demons, and we got to kill them, we got to kill them all. Within a course of a few years, that's absolutely quite an accomplishment to turn them into a revitalized Nazi nation. It's unbelievable. So, but Trump and Greenland, they started seeing, hey, there's something wrong here. This isn't what we ordered, And probably Trump thought he could get away with it. There's 56,000 people in Greenland, apparently, and they're all in the south. And there's probably practically nobody living in the north. I mean, it's like it makes you wonder. They're probably little towns. I don't know. They might even have a dentist or something. I don't know if they're anywhere close to the north. And I think that's mostly where Donald Trump, he wants to put a whole bunch of missiles and, of course, aim them at Russia and maybe even Europe or anybody. So he wants to put a lot of stuff up there. And, of course, he wants to get in and get some minerals as well. But he was thinking it's easy pickings because there's hardly anybody on Greenland. And, it makes sense. It does make sense. But Denmark still doesn't like it. Maybe he should have approached it a different way. He did try that. He tried to buy it, but I don't know. There might have been a better way. I think if I were him, and I guess he had the opportunity to do this, he certainly did, because there is a standing order that he could have just started putting in military bases, more and more military bases, or just, in missiles as well. Just start putting them all over into Greenland and then just declare something like that, because the fact is already done. What is it? Possession is 9/10 of the law, because he would have taken possession of it by that. So I guess he's a little bit dumb too, in a lot of those ways. So, well, that was another reason. That's it's LGBTQ plus, hate Russia, destroy your industry, destroy your culture, all of these things that were demanded by the United States, and not only Germany, but I guess it translates to the other countries too. When you cut off all your gas, your oil, and get rid of your nuclear, power plants, so you're sitting there energyless. It's kind of like eating a bunch of candy or something like that all your life and nothing else, and thinking you're going to get up and run the marathon or something. Or no, eating McDonald's like Trump does. But I don't know. It makes you wonder if they're going to ever wake up and realize how stupid they really are. And I've been saying it for years, and many of us have been saying it. It's absolutely spellbinding. And I think even the Germans are realizing, what a bunch of stupid leaders they got. I mean, they knew exactly what they were doing. Olaf Scholz, as well as Friedrich Merz. And I don't know, are they backing up now, or are they still pledging subservience to the United States? The circus, get on in front of them and then you're on their knees and do a circus seal in front of Donald Trump. Wow. Talking about something that looked at least like a circus seal act, Modi. Modi is visiting Israel, but Modi is always friendly and looks like he's the best buddies with every leader he runs into. I thought it was special with Putin for a couple of these years, and then now everybody is cozying up to India big time. I think they're advancing at even just as powerful a rate as China, and they're going to be moving into the third largest economic power in the world. And they don't even have a veto right, I guess, in the United Nations. And here they are, one of the most economically powerful countries, and their moral standards are far higher than most people in the West that does have a veto. It's like, but yet they don't have a veto, and I don't know. Strange that these countries, the more powerful economic countries, where is Russia at now? I guess is Russia? I thought Russia was like fourth, but if India is going to move into number 3, they must be number 4 right now. Or maybe Russia is number 3, but that doesn't make sense. They don't have the huge economic output I know of that is getting put out by India. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting misinformation. Maybe Russia is down number 5, or maybe they are 3. I don't know. You guys tell me. Economic output. There's, I don't know, what are the measuring criteria? GDP is one of them, of course. I don't know. But let's keep going. So anyway, they're buddy and kissing. Netanyahu and Modi, and you can see it's not difficult to see what Satan Yahoo is doing. He was buttering up to anybody that he can actually try to get something from, and obviously he must really want something from Modi. Maybe he wants to put some planes there to a time to bomb Iran with, just to get another attack angle, put some missiles. I have no idea. I don't think India is going to go for that. India, I think, will try to stay out of it. Okay. And Satan Yahoo, he's nothing more than a, more calculating version of Zelensky. So, and then they're like, I don't know, they might be related as far as I know. Anyway, both of those nations are very similar, as you all know. So the U.S. at first, they approved that Maduro, that the Venezuelan government can pay for Nicolas Maduro's counsel fees, his lawyer fees, to be represented. And then I guess hours later, they rescinded it and said no. And I guess tentatively, the lawyer, and maybe, I don't know if it's going to stay that way, the lawyer for representing Maduro was Barry Polak, who also represented Julian Assange. The United States wanted to put him to death, Julian Assange. The death penalty, probably many counts, or thousands of years in jail. I don't know who was it that, I think it was even Biden that pardoned him. It's kind of weird. You start looking back and you say, well, Biden actually did more good things than Donald Trump did. And he didn't start any wars, Biden. Ukraine, Trump tries to make us be absolutely sure that it was Biden's war, the Ukraine war. But before Biden was president, when Trump was president, he's the first one to give Ukraine lethal weapons, which is the javelins. And he was even going around bragging about it. He was bragging that the Democrats gave Zelensky blankets and he gave them javelins. So whose war is it actually, Trump? Is it your war or Biden's war? I mean, by his own words. So, but anyway, he seems to have cooled down quite a bit now, Trump, and there's still the same amount of weapons is going to Ukraine. I think Joe Biden was sending like $325 to $375 $1 million every month to Ukraine, which is odd because apparently is it 1.2? Maybe it's just over 1 billion is going every month to Ukraine from the United States. Even if Europe is paying for it, it's still weapons for Ukraine. So maybe they're shaving some off the top. It's a kind of a good corruption racket. Really, Donald Trump came up with a really good corruption racket. So they can actually make it look like they're sending all of the weapons to Ukraine, and they shave some off from the top, the ones that they decide they want, until they're tired of it, because this is going to be going on throughout the entirety of 2026, I guess. So that's the thing that has been signed. So the United States is going to make a huge amount of money in that way of selling those weapons. It's a better deal than giving them to Israel, because Israel gets everything free of charge from the United States. Oh, that's not. Thank you, American taxpayers. You guys go to work and you guys, don't have any health insurance anymore, medical insurance, even though the Israelis are 100% covered. Thanks again, American people, for paying for that. And it's all how that works out. So, wonder if I can go to Israel. That's not too bad. If I needed an operation, I would definitely think about it. I don't need any kind of operations. I hope I never do. Nothing like that. Okay. So what's going to happen to Maduro when he's not allowed to get any money to pay for a lawyer? Does that mean he's not going to get a lawyer? I guess everybody has a right to be to counsel in the United States. So they're going to get probably some guy, a lawyer that's in the drunk tank, and pull him out of there and represent Mr. Maduro. It's probably going to be something like that, because I don't know. I'm hoping that Pulak guy stays with it, but I don't know, maybe he can get some recompense or something from the Venezuelan government at some other time in some other way. Panama Papers or Pandora Papers, like the rich people do. They sneak their money and they hide it all over. It's amazing. It's something I've already talked about. I think other people have too. These super rich people, they have far more money than we even know they do, because they have a lot of that hidden, and that has already turned out. I mostly only remember the Panama Papers, and I was hearing about David Cameron, or the Prime Minister of the UK. Oh, I didn't know anything about those millions of dollars. Well, that was my father put those in that bank account, and I didn't know it existed, or some things like that. Yeah, just a couple, 30 million, I don't know, a bunch of millions just sitting around, and just a little bit, guy. That's why I lost track. I didn't know it was there. I mean, it's just a couple million, and what's that? So, anyway, Barry Pollock says there is now no way that Maduro can afford counsel. That's what his words were. Wow. Okay, go to Iran now. A new twist on the Iran attack, even though it's not really a new twist. Obviously, they came up with this before, but maybe it's gaining some steam. It's from the Trump administration, and it says that they are finding out, at least looking at the situation. Situations change, political situations and all that. It changes over time, and Trump is looking at the midterms, and it's getting closer and closer as time goes by to the midterms, and it makes them a little bit more and more nervous. So what the administration is saying, that it is much better if Israel attacks Iran first, and then when Iran retaliates, then the United States can rush into the rescue and save Israel. So apparently that's what they're planning on doing. But as you all know, the defenses of Israel has really been beefed up. They got all sorts of the best things that America has to offer all over there. This is all of their top stuff. It's all going to be put into action there to protect Israel as well as the American ships. And the biggest way to protect those ships is to keep them out of Iran's reach. So just to keep them outside of their 2,000 kilometer zone, I guess, so they don't have weapons that reach. And if they do hit one of these things outside of this zone, they're going to say, aha, you've got larger range missiles than you let on. And the United States is already pushing and saying that they're trying to get weapons to reach the United States. They would be stupid if they didn't, but I don't think they are. And I think I see the logic in that, as you guys do as well. And it's like, when you think about people that are trying to stay moralistic rather than the United States that are not moralistic, they are material-centered. They want money and riches and resources and ideologies to reign and all that. And if you say that Iran has an ideology, it's an ideology based more on morality than what the United States has, which their ideology is based on domination and money. So, but they said that they could very easily make longer range weapons, and they have to curb them down. They have to curb them down to make them go only to a certain length, because they feel they have no business beyond that length. Only within what's maybe within 2,000 kilometers of Iran, I suppose. So, and they don't want nuclear weapons. They said it's against their religion. But the United States, who was it? Even J.D. Vance said yesterday, we know and we have intelligence and proof that they are trying, I think they said, to resuscitate their nuclear weapons. What he means is the program, of course, but there is no evidence of that. And as they keep on threatening and provoking Iran, I don't know, allowing IAEA inspectors to come in is anything Iran likes, especially when the IAEA inspectors have turned out to be spies. They're spies, and they gave the information to the United States to help them in their targeting of where the United States is going to be sending their missiles, at least in the 12-day war. So they're in a bind as well. I think they're trying to play fairly, but when one side does not play fairly, it's sort of like Lukashenko over here in this country. He loves, and he loves the freedom of speech and all. But when you have a lot of those things over here, then the United States floods the country with their agents and their freedom of speech, and they collude together to say all kinds of crazy stuff about, I don't know, what were some of this things that I think he was trying to steal some big building, so the building has been in limbo for many, many, many years. They started building only the frame of this big skyscraper in town, and there's more and more stuff that he wants to attack Poland and Lithuania, and I don't know. So they start using all of this stuff and to brainwash people here in Belarus, and they've had some success. They definitely have had some success using these PSYOPs, and it's maybe a certain version of like MK Ultra or Operation Mockingbird. Some of these CIA things, the Mockingbird one is maybe more appropriate, but the other one, what MK Ultra is mostly, I think, through drugs and all kinds of other coercion methods to try to brainwash people. LSD was actually used for that as well. But interesting sort of stuff. And it's not like conspiracy theory, because the United States has absolutely admitted that they were doing it. And they said that it was, what did they say? They used some word that it was, I don't know, abominable, like the snowman, or something like that. So they said they stopped it, but apparently, I think it was even Candace Owens recently was saying, no, they're still doing MK Ultra. So, and I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it one bit either. So, anyway, what is not said that the United States comes to the rescue of Israel? What is not said is that Israel cannot attack Iran without the help of the United States, such as refueling tankers if they're going to be sending air-to-ground missiles, because I don't think Israel has a long-range missile capacity as of yet, unless they got some from the United States. So that is actually quite impressive that Iran has been able to do that, and Israel hasn't. Most everything Israel gets is from the United States, most of the technology as well. I think they have developed things on their own, but anyway. So Israel also gets the satellite data, very, very high quality satellite data. They're going to have the refueling tankers, and the bombs are made in America that they're going to be, even the missiles that they're going to be firing on Iran. So Israel can't do it on their own. It's like the nuclear bomb thing that's going on in Ukraine. We'll talk about that towards the end here. Tucker Carlson, he came out and said that the U.S. is using the same lie. It's almost the same lie every time, that they always do, to get the American people to support a war on Iran. And the lie is that they're oppressing their own people. They're gassing their own people. They're making women do this, like in Afghanistan, and it's all the same thing. We have to save their people, so because we're humanitarian people, so we have to save them, even though they did nothing when West Ukraine was bombing East Ukraine and killed, over 13,000 people. We didn't see that. That's why the press didn't really report on it. Only at the beginning. And if you would have seen some of the other things that they were doing, like I mentioned already, it was sickening to me when you see a children's school bus bombed out, in books, and they didn't show any really gory stuff, but they probably really could have. A school bus filled with children, and Ukraine bombed it. And it's just like in Israel, the whole thing. The biggest prize is to kill children, and you never thought it would get that way. I started getting really, really pissed off about this. I think it was back in 2024 when I was doing the podcast, with somebody else there. And I called it 2024 was the year of the war on children, but it's never stopped. Epstein stuff and all of that combined. In the old days, you didn't hear about this stuff ever purposely getting children involved as being the victims. So, anyway. So, they're oppressing their own people. And, you heard Trump come out and say, they killed 32,000 protesters on the streets. And it's like, oh, where did you get that information when the internet was all shut down? How was anybody able to get that information out? And it's like, Israel told us. Yeah, Israel, very honest broker, huh? I don't know why they didn't say 100. Matter of fact, so I think it went up. I saw some estimates of 49 or something thousand people. Yeah, right. Well, what about those rallies? Days later. They chose a bad day. They chose a bad day to make this attack. And actually, Scott Bessant of the U.S. Treasury, he admitted that they caused those first riots in Iran. They shorted the Iranian currency to make their money, like the value just plummet, and some people were protesting on the streets. So that was all staged, and then they were virtually dying out. But Israel, and they used people to flood the streets, and they had agents, and they brought them all out. And that's when they got violent. The first ones weren't violent, but then the next ones were violent, because that's what they kicked it off with. And that was obviously planned. A planned United States, we'll start the riots this way. And then, of course, the Mossad, what is there? By way of deception, thou shalt create war. So they were doing that. And wow. But there was no 32,000. I guess the amount, I got it written on the next page, I think, was 13,000? It was 3,117. Yeah. So, and you go back in the early days, I guess, what happened was the difference, because a few days after they staged that, the Israelis staged that, there was the 47th anniversary of the Iranian Revolution, when Ayatollah Khomeini kicked out the United States installed puppet ruler, the Shah, because the United States assassinated Mossadegh, and they installed the Shah, and he was really oppressing people, killing tens of thousands of people. And so the Iranian Revolution meant the end of the Shah, and at least in a much better way, the people took over instead of the United States running the country and stealing the oil. So anyway, on those celebrations, 27 million people turned out on the streets in favor of the government of Iran. So hardly anybody in comparison turned out for these other so-called protests. And it wasn't really even aimed against the government. It was aimed at the government to do something, possibly. But they weren't trying to overthrow the government, at least originally. And a lot of the people afterwards, they were trying to... And I think the regular protesters, they stopped. And only the ones that are mostly paid to do so. And they even have the list of how much you get paid if you kill a policeman. And if there is no policeman, you're supposed to kill the regular people. That's what the rules were, the orders were from the Mossad. Yeah, and they have that. And they have people that admitted that, people they took into custody. Multiple people in different places. So why would they have... some people say the same things, even though they lived in different cities. Anyway. So... yeah, that assassination back in 1953, that was, mostly a CIA operation. And the same year, I believe, they overthrew the government. United States overthrew the government of Guatemala? I think Guatemala. Yeah, Guatemala. So, like I said, 3,117 were killed, and 200 of them were policemen. Yeah. Killed by the Israel, the Mossad CIA assets. Because you got more money, I guess, when you kill a policeman. The plans for Ukraine to get nuclear weapons, that is still a hot topic. Of course, it's very hot in Russia. They're talking a lot about that. And a lot of people are chiming in on that because it's absolutely 100% verified that that is a plan, that they want to give components for a nuclear weapon to Ukraine, and that's the UK and France. And some people are saying that the reason why Germany did not say that is I think they have some special role in it as well, but even though they know about it, was listening to that, and it was in a different language, and they had some subtitles, and I didn't understand it, so I'm not going to say anything about it, but just, you know, be aware that it's possible that even Germany has a hand in this as well, even if they're not going to be giving any of these materials. And if you think about it, Germany doesn't have nuclear weapons, but France does and UK does. So that's probably the reason why Germany is not taking a front row seat in that debacle. But anyway, it's now been again, reminded to everybody in the news that Ukraine was trying to get a nuclear weapon before the special military operation. I remember even on an official scale, they wanted it before, and they start screaming, "Oh, the Budapest Memorandum, and all that sort of thing. But the stipulations in the Budapest Memorandum, and it's only a memorandum, and all that says that there's certain things that they enjoy. Their independence, that they could be a country at all, was contingent upon the fact that they signed documents saying that they will never try to get a nuclear weapon. So here they are trying to get a nuclear weapon, And the weapons that they lost, I think back in those times, they were Russians anyways. They were stationed in the area of Ukraine, because if Ukraine becomes an independent country, they're no longer a part of Russia. So those are not Russian. Let me put it a different way. The weapons are Russian. So Russia has every right to take those weapons because they don't belong to Ukraine. Technically, Russia could take the nuclear power plants and everything else because the Russians made that, not the Ukrainians. So technically, if you want to get that way. Okay, then how much? Oh, almost an hour again. So the difficult part for these Western countries is to try to make it look like that weapon, the nuclear weapon, is going to be homegrown, that Ukraine did it by themselves, instead of getting assisted with components and whatever from the West, France and UK in this particular circumstance. And think about this as well. Like I said, Mark Carney came out and said, like in the World Economic Forum, he said, it's the end of the rules-based order. And, or was he saying, it's only ruptured. But Marco Rubio basically said it's over, and Merz said it's over, that things are different now than they were just recently, say a couple of months ago. And of course, Donald Trump, obviously Donald Trump and he said he doesn't go by international law. He's even admitted it. He goes by his own great sense of morality, the best that ever existed in the world history by far, I guess maybe he would say. But anyway, so there is no, and Mark Carney said, if there ever was a rules-based order, and the rules are based for everybody that is not really close to the United States. Have you ever seen Israel follow any rules? The United States doesn't follow any rules. They do what they want to do. And even under Biden, it doesn't even need to be Donald Trump. They can fabricate some contingency that allows them to do something for some certain circumstance or whatever. So they don't have to obey international law, whether it be the rules-based order, which nobody even knows what it is anyway, and whether it never existed. That's what Carney was getting at, because there is no paper that says what the rules are. It's all a big joke anyway. So if you look at France and UK trying to give these components to Ukraine, and it's like, that's against the NPT, that's against international law. They say, well, what laws? There is no law. It doesn't matter anymore. There is no law. It's gone. The rule of law, the rules-based order, there is no such thing. So they can do whatever they want to do. The rules, I guess, are for the dummies, like Russia. I guess they follow all the rules. They know that following rules makes sense, and there are reasons why you should be following rules and why there are rules. But I guess we're coming into a different world now. I guess it's called something close to anarchy, I guess. I don't know. Donald Trump in his apple cart. Wow. So, and, I have a lot more to say about this here. So they're violating all of that stuff. I've already talked about this stuff. And even some of this behavior, for example, look at Zelensky. He attacks the pipelines, oil pipelines. He damages them, starts them on fire, and burns them. And nothing has ever happened to him. Well, we knew about those earlier ones months ago. It's because the CIA was involved, and that's why nobody did anything and nobody could do anything, because it was the CIA and the Ukrainians. They were doing it. Mostly it was the CIA, and the Ukrainians just took a small part in that to destroy these things, even if it is against Orban, Donald Trump's friend, because they're looking at it from a different angle. Oh, well, you know, if Russia can sell oil, even though it's for Slovakia and Hungary, I guess combined, it's 0.2% of Russia's earnings, something very small or something. But, you know, hey, every little bit counts. So destroy that so that Russia doesn't get any money. And of course, the U.S. is on board with that as well. But they just have to, it's a cunning plan. And, but anyway, rules-based order. So Zelensky does anything he wants to do because he is under the wing of the United States, just like Israel. That's what I keep saying. These countries, Israel and Ukraine, very similar. It's just that they love Israel far, far more. So Israel can do a lot more than what Ukraine, but I think Ukraine probably asked permission. Can I blow up the pipelines? No, it's like, can I shut off the gas? I think they repaired those pipelines, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Ursula von der Leyen urged Zelensky to do that. So he repaired it, and then they just shut the valve to make sure that it still doesn't flow. And Hungary and Slovakia said, well, you know, we're going to keep voting against you getting any of this money until you open up the pipelines. And of course, they're still not going to, because it's all for war. There's a lot of things involved in this. Like, I think Hungary is not sending diesel fuel anymore. And I believe, I don't know if that has already come to pass, that Slovakia has cut off the electricity to Ukraine, like he was saying he's going to do, unless they turn on the pipeline to let them get oil again. So I don't know. But the rules-based order. So what allows Europe to steal Russia's money, you know, the frozen assets, and steal the money? All these people, there is never friggin' any rules even before this rupture or whatever you talk about it. I mean, it's what the United States says. They can do anything. Look at back in Trump's other days. What did he do? He seized the Russian embassies in the United States, San Francisco and otherwise. He just said, get out. You know, Russia paid for those, and they've been there for like 100 years. The one in San Francisco, supposed to be really beautiful, and they did a really good job, and they paid a lot of money for that. And the United States, I think under Donald Trump, just said, get out. That was in his first term. Oh, but we forget about that. And it makes you wonder, why is Russia trying to think like they're going to be friends with the United States? I'm pretty sure that was in the Trump's term. I don't think that was in the Obama days. Sorry, I pointed you. So there was an interview with, it was Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. I'm sure you might have seen him on YouTube. And he was interviewing the former CIA analyst Larry Johnson. Very good information. And Larry Johnson said he believes that the UK and France will definitely be trying to give this nuclear bomb capacity to Ukraine. And he says the way things are expanding and the desperation, and it's like, why is Europe so desperate? And they're desperate to get a war. Ukraine is desperate, and these people are all desperate. And I was saying, I learned in my life, even when it comes to individuals, just as much as with countries, when people are desperate, they do desperate things. So, I mean, have you ever been in a desperate situation yourself? Some of you out there have, and you do some desperate things that you normally, if you're sitting back on a high horse in a nice chair, you said, I would never do that stuff. So once you're in these situations and you've experienced it, it should bring a little bit of wisdom to you to know what happens. And it's kind of like backing a tiger into a corner, a wounded tiger. And I tell you, you don't really want to do that. So a desperate situation and things, you've got to try to give somebody an out, you know, because the desperation, it's not a good thing. Most of the time they get themselves in these things, these countries, like Germany, but they friggin' cut off their energy and deindustrialize and all. I mean, yeah, so there's a desperation there. So, and I've already talked about Zelensky demanding Trump to stop talking to Lukashenko. And Zelensky is making these attacks, I keep saying that, against Belarus, Lukashenko. And he really wants to get Belarus somehow involved. And my opinion is, I have a sneaky suspicion that he wants to do something to provoke Belarus. That is just something that I have in my head, even though I don't really see any of this stuff. But that's how they normally start wars. You provoke somebody to do something, and then you go and cry to somebody else to say, come and help us, because look we're innocent. We did nothing. These other people attacked us. And that's normally how that's going to go. And everybody admits it. I mean, you can see that is the major reason how war starts. World War I started that way. And look at even England and all that. I mean, the whole thing. Oh, we're just minding our own business and we're such nice people and, they attacked us. And even if people know that that's not true, it has to at least appear that way to justify a war, and everybody will rally behind the flag and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Trump talked to Zelensky yesterday, and he said he wants the war to end. And obviously, Zelensky does not want the war to end. Zelensky is trying, and he's even come right out and said it, that he is waiting Trump out. He's waiting. He just has to keep this war going for another 3 years and hope that the next presidency that comes in will jump in on the side of Ukraine and conquer his enemies. It's very much like Israel does. It's the same tactic. But he's just got to wait out Donald Trump, and then hopefully a Democrat, somebody like Kamala Harris or somebody, and he'll be able to manipulate somebody into fighting his war for him. The usual stuff. So that's about it. It's already, again, another hour. I don't know, why are my videos always an hour, and I don't even plan it that way. Anyway, hope you push the like button, everybody. I'd like to get some more of these likes on there. At least I know that I'm doing okay if somebody presses the like button. So, and if they don't, if they're, maybe that video wasn't so good, I start to doubt myself, lose my self-esteem. Anyway, thanks for joining me, everybody. I'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.